All right. Welcome, everyone, to Pep Talk Podcast. This episode is called Decluttering Email. Oh, sorry. I said email first. This episode is called Decluttering Paper, Email, and General Stuff. Where should you start? And I am Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute, joined today by...
I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Wherever you are, whatever platform you're watching from, please feel free to interact with us today, post comments and questions, and be sure that you make your way over to our YouTube channel and be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone else. So one of the things that comes up often, Barbara, and I'll remove this slide in just a minute, but I just want people that are just joining in to see it. So let me say it again, decluttering paper. Okay, so think about your paper in your space, whether it be your desk, your kitchen counter, your dining room table, wherever that is, your paper, email. Okay, and that could also include all digital information. So email, computer files. Think about that. Get a visual of that. Do you see clutter in there, in your email box? Bless you. In your computer file, in your computer. And then general stuff. How many of you guys have general stuff that feels like clutter? This topic has come up. Barbara, we often in our boot camps, we have an office transformation boot camp and a digital transformation boot camp, and we really zero in on very specific types of clutter, right? And it's like laser focused. When we're talking about paper, we are laser focused on paper. For those of you that don't know yet, Barbara has been known for 40 plus years as the paper tiger lady. She was the creator of Taming the Paper Tiger. She wrote Taming the Paper Tiger at Home, Taming the Paper Tiger at Work. There was software named after her. Our whole business was built off of those principles. So we have focused on helping people declutter their paper and set up a system, organize it, whatever they keep. In fact, Barbara, you wrote the book. I know that there's a different, book after this one, but Taming the Paper Tiger at Home, What to Toss and How to Find the Rest. That last piece is key. What exactly. To toss, that's the decluttering.
Well, that ties into Hemphill's principle. If you don't know you have it or you can't find it, it's of no value to you.
That's right.
And let me just back up and say that I started with the first clients I had. Most of them were closets and kitchens and garages. But what I found out very quickly was that paper was the most difficult and still is for many people.
Okay, good. I want to come back to that. I want to come back to your early days experience in just a second. So our main big focus for many, many years has been the paper, because I came into your life after the beginning stages and we were just focused on paper. So then, of course, email came along in those years, and email and electronic information. And you routinely call that the bigger, faster, hidden mess. Because we can see our papers, but we can't see all the stuff that's happening on our computers and behind the scenes and our email and our phones and all of that. So we focus on that. We have a specific boot camp set aside just to deal with email and computer files. So we're laser focused on there. But what I'm seeing is that, of course, and we've known this for years, but I'm seeing more of it because of the number of clients we're seeing in our boot camps and being able to help more and more people by having group settings. What I'm seeing is while they're in there focusing on those specific things, whichever boot camp we're doing, many of them are also dealing with a lot more stuff, like behind the scenes. We only see this much of their Zoom screen. So there are people who have been in their same homes for, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they've got that much accumulation of clutter. And sometimes it's just confined into one room. So maybe it's the office that is full of paper clutter. And sometimes it goes into the rest of the house and the garage and the attic and the basement and the storage unit that they're paying for each month. So I want to talk about that.
Many of them are caregivers for their parents. So they had their stuff to begin with. And then a relative dies, and then suddenly they get all of that stuff as well. And it just is overwhelming. So that's
Yeah.
again, lots of paper, because that's what nobody wants to deal with that. So when somebody dies, the paper's always left. But there's also the other stuff, and that's the stuff that's the sentimental stuff. So I was at a conference in Dallas, and I gave a short presentation, and there was a woman there who's pushing 90. And when I was done presenting, she said, that presentation was for me. She said, my house is full of stuff from my mother, my grandmother, and my great grandmother.
And she was 90. She's 90.
She
And
was,
this is
yes.
all these generations. Wow.
And so that's the sentimental part. This is valuable, but we're seeing now that the children and the grandchildren in most cases have absolutely no interest in it. So that brings up some huge emotional trauma, really trauma.
Truly, truly. So one of the things that I see, like when we do a webinar, probably around every 6 weeks or so, and sometimes that webinar is focused on paper, and sometimes it's focused on digital. But that's how a lot of people enter our world. Maybe they're watching this video right now, and then they're going to click the link in the description that signs them up for our webinar, and then they're focused on whatever that topic is, whether it's paper or digital. So they're going to focus on there because they've been trying to deal with all the other clutter and they just don't know where to start. They're literally, like you said, it's overwhelming. Where do I start? So I think, and I want to come back to your early days on this. I think that my opinion is that it doesn't matter where you start as long as you start. With that said, I do realize it's paralyzing. And there are things that our boot campers are doing. Some of our clients that they've gone beyond the boot camp and they're doing additional things now as well that they could have done years ago. Like sometimes it feels simple when they get into it. It's like, well, why didn't I already do this? Why haven't I done this before? And so, but it's not simple. It literally can be paralyzing. So having someone, whether it be this is what we specialize in. So we highly recommend that you connect with us and have a conversation to see if we can be your coach. We can help guide you. We have a whole team of coaches, but have someone, it could be a family member or somebody in your community, having just that other person there to guide and help you helps you overcome that paralysis, really. So that's one thing I just want to say. There is hope. There's no guilt or shame in how long you've been dealing with that clutter. You can tackle it. We just have to figure out, and that's something we can do together. We can figure out what is the best place to start for you. So that's something I want to talk about. But Barbara, let's go back to the early days. You said, so you were doing the closets and the garages and the attics.
We actually started with paper. So the very first client was paper. So this was a 55-year-old widow whose husband was an attorney and died leaving piles of paper. So my very first client was paper. But then I began speaking at church groups and garden clubs. And so then I began getting other kinds of things, closets and cupboards and kitchens and things like that. So that's how it started.
So then I'm sure there were times in those early clients that did you come across that dilemma? It's like, oh my goodness, should we keep focusing on the paper or should we stop and move over here? Or did you do things in tandem?
Well, and it all depends. This is the art of organizing. It does not have a right or wrong way. But I think first of all, the premise of this company from the beginning is clutter is postponed decisions. So it doesn't matter if you're deciding about a piece of paper or where you're deciding about an email or whether you're deciding about a scarf that's been hanging in your closet for decades and you've never worn it, that kind of thing. So you make the decisions. Why do we have trouble? And the reason that people don't deal with it is, number one, is the emotion around it, being afraid that they'll make a mistake. And we can spend a whole session on that. We're going to talk about it, but it's an emotional, it's the emotion behind it, which is very, very deep. But then the next part, and this is where the correlation between paper and email comes in, is you cannot declutter randomly. It just doesn't work, because what ends up happening is shuffling. because you pick up something, whatever it is, and you don't want to decide. And so you just shuffle it. So you get a few things done, but there's no system. So we use systems, the acronym saving you space, time, energy, and money. So there has to be a system for decluttering. And again, there is no right or wrong, but it has to be specific. And this is what the plan is, a framework. Andrea, you came up with a framework with flexibility. So there is a framework, but there's flexibility within that
core
really
structure. Yeah, core, which is the same thing as a framework. Core structure with flexibility. So be either building your own structure, which if you're in paralysis in the situation, then you're not going to be able to do that. That's where it is helpful to have someone help you do that, help you create the structure.
Yeah. And then I think, so you need the structure, then you need accountability, because if this were easy to do, it wouldn't be here for decades.
Right.
I cannot tell you the numbers of people early in my career who were cleaning up in order to move. And then after they got it cleaned up, it's like, oh, I could have done this for decades. It's like, I don't even want to move now.
Yeah.
So you need to have accountability, because we're far more willing to be accountable to other people than we are ourselves. And then the third one, and I think this is the thing that has made such a difference in our boot camps, is community. There is so much shame involved about our clutter. I hadn't thought about this literally in decades, but I personally am doing a lot of business to business now. We're selling to a business. I've sold to many executives in the past, but they never sold it to their company. And as I thought about it, I realized the reason they didn't was because they were ashamed that they had to hire a professional to help them clear up their clutter. I had one executive that hired me from 6 p.m. till midnight because she did not want any of her colleagues to know that I was there. And if someone came in while I was there, I was introduced as a friend. So it's having a system to declutter, having accountability to allow you to do it, and then doing it in community so that you don't feel so ashamed and you're not doing it. My mother used to say, many hands make light work. And I think of one of my first clients was an astrophysicist. We were in his garage in Arlington, Virginia. We were cleaning out, in this case, there was old tires, but there was also boxes and boxes of paper. And he was laughing. And I remember him looking at me and saying, if anybody had ever told me that I'd be laughing cleaning out the garage, I'd have told them they were crazy.
It can be fun. And that's, in fact, I'm going to point, that kind of goes along with what Kathy said. She used the word liberating. It's the same thing. So Kathy Music, New Path Productivity, is one of our certified productive environment specialists. She said, creating simple yet personalized systems to handle all forms of clutter is so liberating. It is liberating, freeing, fun. It's just, it's really hard to describe it in any other way. And maybe you can't even imagine that because you're so inundated with it. You're drowning.
I don't think people can. My experience is that you cannot describe it. It has to be an experience. But here's the good news. And I think this is important for our call today. So, and this is written in a book, so I'm not telling tales. So Louise Vanier did the gorgeous photography that is in my book, Less Clutter, More Life. And we wrote the book, but she had never been a client of mine. And so I made the comment, it feels like for this book to have integrity, you really need to experience something. And so she said, okay, I have this jewelry. I mean, she had an enormous collection of jewelry, some of it very valuable, some of it not valuable at all, but not organized at all. And so we tackled her jewelry. And it was challenging because it brought up lots of emotion. There was jewelry given to her by people she loved, but she didn't really like it. And it's valuable. What do I do with it? And all that sort of thing. We did it. That was in 2014. And when I talked to her in the last year, she said, my jewelry is still organized. And the exciting part, and applies to our topic today, is she learned the principles. So it really is about the principles, that when people understand the principles. So with paper, it started with clutters, postpone decisions. There's only 3 decisions you can make: file, act, or toss. Well, you can apply that to stuff as well. So the big stuff in the garage, it isn't file, but it's
Keep.
store.
Right. Keep or store. Yeah.
Keep. Do something, give it to somebody or get it repaired, or what is it that needs to happen? And then finally, not knowing anything about it. That is the way that it works. And so wherever you learn the principles, you can apply it regardless of where you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So in case you guys didn't get that, for those of you that are new, we teach something called the file, act, toss system. So file, if it's paper or email, it's file it for future reference. If it's stuff, it's keep or store, as you said. Act is something, an action required. If it's paper or email, it's a call you need to make, or a letter you need to send, or something physical that you need to do. And then with stuff, act could be donate, give, take to Goodwill. And that is an important piece too. I want to come back and talk about that in a minute, when in the whole decluttering process. But yeah, so those are, I was trying to get a banner, but I was looking at the wrong set. So anyway, file, act, toss system. So just change it over to keep, do, or toss. And toss is get rid of, whether it be in the garbage or the recycle bin, or disposing of it in another way. In fact, we were working with someone who had lots and lots of paint. And so there were some extra steps that needed to happen, because that could be considered hazardous waste. You don't want to just throw that in a dumpster. So some phone calls needed to be made. There were actions before that could leave their space. And so phone calls had to be made, arrangements had to be made, car needed to be loaded. There are things that happen to get it out. But man, the freedom and the liberation of feeling and having that extra space now is just incredible. So it does. Barbara, our principles, your principles do apply across the board. And I love your example of Louise's jewelry. So guys, when you think about all the stuff and it's like, well, I'm so overwhelmed, I have so much, where do I start? Louise started with her jewelry. So maybe that's you. Maybe you've got a jewelry box. And if that is you find somewhere where you can start, that's maybe a smaller project.
One of the things is about decluttering is there always needs to be a why.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, we talked about a client whose why is, for the first time in decades, they want to have Thanksgiving dinner on the dining room table. That's a why.
Mm-hmm.
Because organizing in and of itself has no value. And there are people who spend their whole lives organizing, reorganizing, and don't really have anything to show for it. It's just, and it affects and annoys everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just said something that made me think about something. Now, this is where organizing is an art. There is no right way or wrong way to do it. So I'm going to describe two scenarios, and based on your personality, you figure out which one of these you feel like you would do. And if you're in the chat somewhere, wherever you're watching, I want to hear from you. So Barbara, I actually just said, because you were talking about the jewelry, I just said, start with something small. And I almost used the example of the junk drawer, which is a potential thing to do. If you start, don't worry about the whole big house. Start with a junk drawer. However, my internal something inside me said that could be even more overwhelming than the big stuff, because it's the minutia. It's the little things that sometimes, and I remember when I was moving from my other condo to this condo, I got really hung up on the minutia, and I needed, in fact, Carrie Thomas is one of our specialists, and she lived nearby. She's moved, but she lived nearby at the time. And I had her come over. I was like, Carrie, I can't do the stuff in the closet. And it wasn't even really the clothes. It was my shelves with general stuff on it. And I literally had to have her stand in my closet with me and help me go through the paper clips and the binder clips and the rubber bands and the notebooks I'd say from conferences and the little, all that stuff. And it was very overwhelming. Where going into another part of the house, boxes. If there were boxes of books, that was easy. Barbara's coming. I'm gonna put those books in her trunk and she's going to donate them. Remember you did that. You took my boxes of books. And so maybe you do need to start with the big stuff. If you go into your garage or a room in your house and you've got empty boxes you've been saving for something, or you've got empty boxes or partially filled boxes, start consolidating. If you got little things in boxes,
that brings up one of the principles that's really basic. I mean, in fact, I think I don't say it often enough now. I mean, I used to say it all the time, but it's put like things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So jewelry is a good example. And actually, if you go back to Marie Kondo and the magic of tidying up, one of the things that she said, and we get Marie Kondo dropouts. I've had people say, "Oh, if you have to do that, I'll never survive." But everybody has systems that work, and hers work for the people who do it. But one of the things that she says that I think, have been doing the same thing is put like together. So, for example, the jewelry. You need to get the jewelry from all the rooms in the house at the same time, because you need to put like together. So then you're putting it together either by category or however it is. But if you only organize what's in one room and then you go to another room, then you haven't done it. So, and the reason the junk drawer is not a good place to start is because it has all that minutia in it. And I'll think of one, I hadn't thought about this in 40 years probably, but I remember I had a client where there was a button, the button was in the junk drawer, and it was a really unique button that belonged to a particular item of clothing, but she didn't know where the item of clothing was. So one of the rules was you put it where it would belong if it were working. So obviously a button would belong on clothes, which means it would be in the closet. So we literally took a hanger, put the button in a plastic bag, put the plastic bag on the hanger, and hung it in the closet, so that when we were sorting the clothes, we could match the item with. I hadn't thought about that for years, but
I've never heard you tell that. So I thought I heard all your stories. I've never heard that story.
Yep.
And I never heard that principle either. If you're not sure where it goes, put it where, if it worked, where it would go.
That's right. Put it where it would, if it were working the way you wanted it, where would it work? And that button would be in the closet if it were working. But then you have to be able to find it, right? So if you just stuff it somewhere, but it's like, okay, the button goes on an item of clothing. The item of clothing is going to be hanging on the hanger. So we'll take the button, put it in the plastic bag, hang the plastic bag on the hanger, and that's what we did. And we found the clothes eventually. And
you did.
Together.
I want to know from you guys that are watching, whether you're watching live or the replay, how many of you have at least one button in your junk drawer? Yes, I think everybody has at least a button. Let's see, a penny, a twist tie, a battery.
Yeah. And battery, that brings up an interesting thing. One of the things that I used to give as a gift when I would do household organizing, I gave a battery, not a charger. What do you call it to tell whether to measure whether
tester.
I gave a battery tester.
Wow.
As a gift, because how many times do you come with batteries, but you don't know if it's good or not? And so a perfect gift was a battery tester. And so I would get a basket. And, one of the other things of decluttering is put like things together. And really important thing is deciding how much of your valuable space you are willing to give up to that particular item. So I would get a basket that looked like a reasonable amount of batteries to keep. I put a label on it that said batteries. And then I put a battery tester in it. And then next to it was, in the beginning we didn't, but as I got older, it was like we now recycle. Back when I first started, we didn't do that. But now you recycle them. So if you come into my laundry room, there's one basket that says batteries and has a battery tester in it. And then next to it is one that says batteries to be recycled.
Brilliant. The battery tester gift idea. That's right up there with like a letter opener. It's something so simple, but if you need it, wow, that may be the thing I need that I didn't know I needed all these years.
Your birthday's coming up. I'll have to give you a battery tester for your birthday.
It is. I have to comment. I know I've said this on one of these calls before, but I'm laughing because you always use the woman, and I've known you now for 19 years. So, and you started this you always told the story about your first client who was the 55-year-old widow whose husband died and didn't have a will, and that whole story, right? You guys heard it at the beginning, partially. And I always envisioned the 55, because remember now, 19 years ago, I was in my 30s, right? So I'm hearing this story and I'm picturing this little old lady, this little old 55-year-old lady. Well, I'll be 55 on Saturday. Oh my gosh, times have changed. But anyway,
Yeah,
so I had that realization.
Your perspective changes, doesn't it?
It does change. Yes, exactly. So anyway, yeah, this is just such a good topic. So I think I just want to circle back as we start to wrap up that there is no right place to start or wrong place to start. It's to start. And when we offer our boot camps, which our next one, well, anyway, I don't want to say any dates on here because this video, depending on when you see it. But reach out to us, like fill out our scorecard. We'll put a link to our productive environment scorecard in the chat and wherever you're watching, and also in the description box on YouTube. So if you find, just make sure, fill that out and let's have a conversation and we'll discuss what makes sense. And there's no charge for that conversation. What makes the most sense for you to start?
And let me just point out there at the end of that scorecard, there's one fill in the blank, which is really important. It says, what's the one thing that has to happen for you to feel happy about your progress or some way like that? Fill in that blank. And if it's stuff, put stuff in there.
Yes,
because we can have a conversation with you to help you decide where your stuff, where would be the most productive way for you to start. And that's the reason that this is so much fun for me after going on 47 years now. And it's like, because God did not create any two people the same. And so it's different. And it really is. And people, we say this all the time. People say, what should I do? I always say that's the wrong question. The question is, what will you do? And so what we will work with on this, you get, after you fill out the scorecard, you get a 30-minute conversation with us where we customize it for what is it that you will do that's really going to be in your best interest. So you're making progress so that you can accomplish your work and enjoy your life.
Exactly. And I want to just say something to our current existing clients that may be watching this. You may have started with paper and now you're over on digital as well. And now you're over in some other stuff in the house. That's okay too. You can do things because our energy levels change. We just don't want you to be all over the place. That's one thing. But if you've got a structured system and you might work a little bit in over here, but then it's okay to start another project. It's okay, because your attention span might change too. You might get inundated in one area and be like, you know what, let me go clear out some space in the spare bedroom. And that may make you feel better. That's okay.
And the key to each one is having a system for each one, but you can go back and forth between the two systems. But if there's not a system involved, then you're just going to be making the system, you're going to make it feel worse. And you'll feel worse and you won't be successful.
That's right. And we want you to feel better and feel successful. So we will wrap up on that. So fill out your scorecard and share this video.
Andrea, I found something this morning I just have to share that's so appropriate. This is a Jules Pfeiffer cartoon. I don't know if anybody even remembers or not, but it's called this cartoon was called The Secret of Success. And it says, sir, what is the secret of your success? A reporter asked a bank president. 2 words. And sir, what are they? Right decisions. And how do you make right decisions? 1 word. And sir, what is that? Experience. And how do you get that? Wrong decisions.
Yep.
And I think it is that fear of wrong decisions. So that brings me to the question you should ask yourself, which is, what's the worst possible thing that would happen if I didn't have this? So whatever this item is in the garage or this piece of paper, if I got rid of this and it turned out that I was wrong, what would be the price? And is that a price I'm willing to pay? And it's not a moral issue. It doesn't have a right or wrong. But if you decide to keep it, we have the cost factor. You can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price, time, space, money, and energy. If you decide that you're willing to keep it, then you have to make sure that you have a way that you can find it. And that's what Productive Environment Institute is all about. It's about making your environment intentional so you can find what you keep.
Amen. Thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Pep Talk. We hope you enjoyed the pep talk and you're excited and invigorated and ready to go declutter something. So we will see you next time. Be sure to fill out your scorecard. Bye, guys.